Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Starting with the great name of Allah, who is the most merciful and the most beneficent. Assalamu alaikum, my dear viewers. With this series of English essay, our today topic of discussion is democracy in Pakistan. दोस्तों, आज की इस वीडियो में हम इंग्लिश essay के ऊपर बात करने वाले हैं, खुसूसन डेमोक्रेसी के ऊपर, यानी पाकिस्तान में डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान। जैसे कि आप लोगों को पता है दोस्तों, कोई भी इससे होता है उसके 3 पोर्शन होता है। इसे सबसे पहले हम इसे को इंट्रोड्यूस करवाते हैं, इसको इंट्रोडक्शन कहते हैं। इसमें हम अपने जो टॉपिक है उसको इंट्रोड्यूस करवाते हैं। इसी तरह इससे का जो सेकंड पोर्शन होता है वो इससे का बॉडी होता है। इसी तरह इससे का जो थर्ड पोर्शन है वो इस कंक्लूजन होता है। दोस्तों, सबसे पहले जो इंट्रोडक्शन है, इंट्रोडक्शन में हम कोई भी जो टॉपिक हम लेते हैं हम उसको इंट्रोड्यूस करवाते हैं, और इसमें एक बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ आता है, उसको बोलते हैं थीसिस स्टेटमेंट। थीसिस स्टेटमेंट जो है वो हमारे इससे का क्रक्स होता है, इससे का मेन थीम होता है। इसी तरह हम इंट्रोडक्शन में एक स्टांस लेते हैं दोस्तों। स्टांस लेने के बाद हम इस स्टांस को अपने बॉडी में हम प्रूफ करते हैं। स्टांस को हम प्रूफ करते हैं हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव्स के ज़रिए। इसी तरह हम इंफॉर्मेशन दे सकते हैं। इसी तरह हम बॉडी में हम काज़ बयान कर सकते हैं, उस चीज़ के इफ़ेक्ट बयान कर सकते हैं, उसके प्रोपोनेंट हम दे सकते हैं, उसके अपोनेंट हम दे सकते हैं। इसी तरह हम रिसर्च वगैरह आप एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं किसी भी टॉपिक के ऊपर, अगर कोई रिसर्च है उसके ऊपर। इसी तरह हम स्टेट्स दे सकते हैं। इसी तरह उसमें हम अपने ओपिनियन दे सकते हैं। तो जो लास्ट जो पोर्शन जो इससे का होता है वो है कंक्लूजन। कंक्लूजन में हम अपने इससे के ऊपर जो कुछ लिखा है उसको हम सम अप करते हैं, उसको एक पैराग्राफ के अंदर सम अप करते हैं, यानी समंदर को हम कुज़े में बंद करते हैं। तो ये थी एक शॉर्ट सी इससे के बारे में इंट्रोडक्शन। तो दोस्तों, आज की टॉपिक की तरफ चलते हैं। आज का टॉपिक है डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान। ये कंप्लीट इससे है। तो अब हम बात करेंगे आउटलाइन की बात करेंगे। आउटलाइन ये है बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट होता है। जैसे आप लोगों को पता है, हम कम्पिटिटिव एग्ज़ाम की तैयारी करते हैं या कोई और एग्ज़ाम पे हम जाते हैं, अगर हमें कोई लंबी सी इससे लिखने को बोलते हैं ना, तो वो आउटलाइन के बगैर मुमकिन ही नहीं है। तो इसीलिए आउटलाइन बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है। आउटलाइन से पहले आप लोगों ने एक काम करना है कि इससे आपको बहुत सारे एसेस दिए जाते हैं, उनमें से ऐसे टॉपिक को आप लोगों ने चूज़ करना है। आपके पास उस टॉपिक के बारे में बहुत ज़्यादा नॉलेज हो, रिसर्च बेस्ड नॉलेज हो, आप उसके ऊपर सेशन दे सकते हैं, आप उसके काजेज़ भी आप उसके काजेज़ बयान कर सकते हैं, उसके इफ़ेक्ट बयान कर सकते हैं। इसी तरह मीन्स यानी आपके पास उस टॉपिक के बारे में बहुत ही अच्छा इन्फॉर्मेशन हो, रिसर्च बेस्ड इन्फॉर्मेशन हो, और आप जो अपना रीडर है आप उस टॉपिक में आप अपने रीडर को कन्विंस कर सकते हैं। यानी आपका जो रीडर है या आपका जो एग्ज़ामिनर है वो आपके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से वो एग्री करे। तो इस तरह का टॉपिक आप लोगों ने चूज़ करना है, ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है। तो टॉपिक को आपने सोच समझ के आप लोगों ने चूज़ करना है। उसके बाद आता है आप लोगों ने ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग करना है। जो टॉपिक आप चूज़ करते हैं उसके बारे में जितने भी इंफॉर्मेशन, जितने भी रिसर्च बेस्ड इंफॉर्मेशन हो, स्टट्स से हो, जितने भी एग्जांपल से हो, जो कुछ भी आप लोगों के जहन में आ रहा है उसको आप लोगों ने ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग करनी है। उसके बाद आप लोगों ने आउटलाइन बनानी है। आउटलाइन के बाद फिर आप लोगों ने इससे लिखना शुरू करना है। तो ये बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट स्ट्रेटजी है। तो आज का जो टॉपिक है उसका आउटलाइन है। चलो इसको डिस्कस करते हैं। आउटलाइन में सबसे पहले हम इंट्रोडक्शन देते हैं, उसके बाद फिर बॉडी आती है, उसके बाद फिर कंक्लूजन आता है। तो इंट्रोडक्शन में है व्हाट इज़ डेमोक्रेसी। उसके बाद सेकंड नंबर पे हम डिस्कस करेंगे एसेंशियल्स ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी। इस तरह हम डिस्कस करेंगे डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान। उसके बाद आएगा ब्रीफ हिस्ट्री। इसी तरह आएगा द अर्ली पीरियड फ्राम 1947 टू 1958। इसी तरह आएगा पीरियड ऑफ जनरल अयूब एंड ज़ियाउल हक। इसी तरह आएगा पॉलिटिकल टर्मोइल एंड जनरल परवेज़ मुशर्रफ। अच्छा, उसके बाद हम डिस्कस करेंगे काजेस ऑफ फेलर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान। तो उसकी जो काजेस है उसको डिस्कस करेंगे। काजेस है डिलेड फ्रेमिंग ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फ्यूडलिज्म है, इसी तरह लीडरशिप क्राइसिस है, लैक ऑफ एजुकेशन है, नो इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी, इसी तरह वीक पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज एंड देयर इन फाइटिंग, इसी तरह है डिलेड इलेक्शन एंड रिगिंग, इसी तरह करप्शन एंड नेपोटिज्म, काजी फ्यूडलिज्म एंड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बिटवीन ईस्टर्न एंड वेस्टर्न विंग्स, इसी तरह टेररिज्म एंड एक्सट्रीमिज्म, पाकिस्तानी डेमोक्रेसी वर्सेस वेस्टर्न डेमोक्रेसी। अच्छा, उसके बाद आएगा काजिस के बाद आएंगे सजेशन, यानी सजेशन दे सकते हैं। तो सजेशन क्या आएगा? इफेक्टिव अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ द पॉलिटिशियंस, इसके बाद आएगा रिफॉर्मिंग जुडिशरी, इसी तरह एबॉलिश फ्यूडलिज्म, इसी तरह आएगा एलिमिनेट करप्शन, इसी तरह आएगा टू पार्टी सिस्टम ऑन द पैटर्न ऑफ यूएसए एंड यूके, इसी तरह आएगा अमेंडमेंट इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, फिर आएगा फेयर एंड फ्री इलेक्शन, इसी तरह इंक्रीज द एजुकेशन बजट टू एजुकेट पीपल, इसी तरह आएगा अनइंटरप्टेड डेमोक्रेटिक प्रोसेस, इसी तरह स्ट्रेंथनिंग द इंस्टीट्यूशन। ये सब लिखने के बाद लास्ट में हमने अपने हिस्से को कंक्लूड करना है, यानी ये कुछ लिखा है, आप लोगों ने उसको प्रेफरेंस करके एक पैराग्राफ के अंदर बयान करना है। दोस्तों, जब भी हम इससे लिखते हैं तो हम इससे को कोई कोट से स्टार्ट करते हैं, ये लाजमी नहीं है, लेकिन अगर आप कोई कोटेशन से अगर इससे को स्टार्ट करें तो एग्जामिनर के ऊपर या रीडर के ऊपर अच्छा इंप्रेशन पड़ता है, इसलिए हम अपने हिस्से को कोटेशन से स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं। तो डेमोक्रेसी, इससे ऑन डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान, इसमें कोटेशन है कायदे आज़म मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना का। चलो उसको पहले पढ़ते हैं। You have to stand guard over the development and the maintenance of Islamic democracy, Islamic social justice, and the equality of manhood in our own native soil. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Democracy is a form of government in which all citizens have an equal say in the decisions that affect their lives. Ideally, this includes equal and more or less direct participation in the proposal, development, and the passage of legislation into law. It can also encompass social, economic, and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination, where there is no specific universally accepted definition of democracy. Equality and freedom have both been identified as important characteristics of democracy since ancient times. These principles are reflected in all citizens being equal before the law and having equal access to legislative process. For example, in a representative democracy, every vote has equal weight. No unreasonable restriction can apply to anyone seeking to become a representative, and the freedom of its citizens is secured by legitimized rights and liberties which are generally protected by a constitution. Many people use the term democracy as shorthand for liberal democracy, which may include elements such as political pluralism, equality before law, the right to petition elected officials for redress of grievances, due process, civil liberties, human rights, and elements of civil society outside the government. In the United States, separation of power is often cited as a central attribute, but in other countries such as the United Kingdom, the dominant principle is that of parliamentary sovereignty. Through an practical judiciary independence is generally maintained. In other cases, democracy is used to mean direct democracy. Though the term democracy is typically used in the context of political state, the principles are applicable to private organizations and other groups as well. Democracy in its true spirit has never been allowed to take roots in Pakistan. Since its independence in 1947, a military bureaucratic establishment has always governed the country. Army generals usurp power at their own convenience and quite only when they are forced to quit by mass political movements or by a sudden unexpected death. When forced by external and internal pressures, democracy is given a chance, but in reality, a group of army generals keep controlling the decision making. This direct and indirect military influence is the greatest impediment to the evolution of a stable governing system in Pakistan. Besides, the army is not solely responsible for this mess, but it is our inefficient politicians who provide an opportunity for elite to take over. Recall the last 62 years of Pakistan. Democracy is found only in an interval before the next military general comes to the scene. The future of democracy was doomed from the start when Liaquat Ali Khan, the first prime minister, was shot at a public gathering. Nobody knows to this day who did it and why. From now on, the balance of power was to shift in the favor of military. A comparison tells us how this shift came up. From 1951 to 1957, India had one prime minister and several army chiefs, while during the same period Pakistan had one army chief and several prime ministers. The same army chief, the then harassed trained general Ayub Khan, was to announce the first martial law in the country in 1958, and then a series of military rulers were to follow. Ayub Khan could not withstand a popular national movement against him and transferred power to General Yahya Khan in March 1969. Under him, Pakistan lost its half, which is now Bangladesh. Power was then transferred to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto as the first civilian martial law administrator. Bhutto pursued an independent policy which was against what generals and the US wanted, and he had to pay with his life. Charged for compliance in murder, Bhutto was hanged by the next martial law administrator, General Ziaul Haq. The hanging of an elected prime minister was shocking news to the world, and Pakistan was to have the effect years later. The general died in a mysterious plane crash. Then comes a 10-year gap of experimentation with the democracy, and every 2 years each elected government was ousted by the special discretionary power of the president. An end to this 10-year spell come with a new general coming to power, ousting the incumbent elected government of Mian Nawaz Sharif. This come the prime minister has charged with conspiracy against the state and was ousted from the country. Military rule has ruined the state structure of Pakistan as a whole, with only the elite benefiting from the system and no benefit being passed out to the general public. History is witness to the fact that Pakistan has large territory while under direct military rule. The dictator mentality and the military's love for the use of force have fanned various separatist movements in the country. The immediate and the foremost requirement of the Constitution Assembly was to frame a democratic constitution for the country. The Constitution had to lay down in the form of government the role of the judiciary, military, and the bureaucracy. It had to decide the basic issues about provincial autonomy, religion, and the state. The UN are separate electorate representation of minorities and the women in assemblies, fundamental rights, and civil liberties. The debate about the representation of eastern and the western wing of the country and religion versus secularism were the two main hindrances in the way of framing the constitution. As against India, which was able to frame the constitution of the country within 2 years of independence in 1949, Pakistan took 9 years to finalize a constitution in 1956, which did not work for more than 2 years and was abrogated. The second constitution was framed by military ruler General Ayub in 1962, which could last as long as he was in power. Finally, it was after the separation of East Pakistan and the lapse of more than a quarter of a century, 1947 to 1973, that the elected representative of the country under the leadership of Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto framed a consensus constitution envisaging a federal democratic structure for the country and a parliamentary form of government. This constitution was survived in spite of breakdown of democracy twice in 1978 and in 1999, and hopefully was come to stay. But the delay in framing the constitution harmed the growth of political democracy, as it allowed the authoritarian rule of the Governor General to continue for 7 long years, from 1947 to 56, which set this inglorious tradition in the country. The second obstacle in the way of democracy is the culture of feudalism. Democracy cannot develop in the suffocated atmosphere of feudalism. The history of feudalism in subcontinent is not very old. It owes its origin to the War of Independence in 1857, when different people were awarded large swathes of land by a British government because of their treacherous cooperation with the latter. Those feudal families joined Muslim League when they saw that Pakistan was going to be a reality and inherited power after the death of founding father. Feudalism was now become a severe migraine for the nation. Democracy and feudalism are incompatible. Change of the faces at the wheel has not served any person. Even this feudal lot occupy more than 70% of our land, leaving the people to lead a miserable life. They are senators, ministers, MPs, MNs, and also the owner of major industries in Pakistan. There is a crying need to bring some structural changes in order to strengthen the political system. The industrialization has also played a significant role in the strengthening of democracy across the world. Great Britain is considered the mother of democracies in this planet. Some analysts are of the view that democracy has its origin in the Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, and habeas corpus, etc. But even after this development, every might rulers have ruled Great Britain. In fact, the invention of the steam engine led to the Industrial Revolution, which eradicated the roots of feudalism and the evil of absolute monarchy. All this resulted in the development of democracy. In Pakistan, there is everything from adult franchise to the separation of power between the three organs of government, but no plan for that kind of industrial revolution. Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the father of the nation and the first Governor General, died just 1 year after the establishment of Pakistan on September 11, 1948, and his right hand Lieutenant Liaquat Ali Khan, who was the first Prime Minister, was assassinated in October 16, 1951, about the capability of other leaders of Pakistan Muslim League, PML, the party which had successfully piloted the movement for Pakistan. Jinnah had ruefully remarked that he had false coin in his pocket. Consequently, several ministers appointed initially were not politicians and did not have a seat in the assembly. Similarly, in 1954, there were several members of the Prime Minister cabinet without a seat in parliament. The cabinet and other high political appointments reflected a paucity of talent among the politicians. It is indeed a sad commentary on the elected members of the first legislature and the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan that they could not find a suitable head of state from among their own ranks. Most of them come from civil bureaucracy or the military. The civil military bureaucracy did not have a favorable opinion about the competence of political leaders and often took decisions without consulting them. This adverse affected their political training, development, and the growth. The inability to control the anti-Ahmadis movement in Punjab in 1953 was blamed on inept political leadership. This religious movement was spearheaded by the Religious Ihrar Party, which had opposed the establishment of Pakistan and now wanted again to come into the limelight. They were supported by other religious parties, i.e. Jamiat-e-Islami, Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Pakistan, and Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam. The movement was exploited by politicians in their own political interest, but the civil military bureaucracy was against the religious parties dominated the power structure, either in the provinces or the center. To rescue the city of Lahore, where Ahmadis were in a virtuous state of siege and their parties were being burnt or looted, General Azam Khan, the area commander, was ordered by the defense secretary to impose martial law in Lahore. It was met with the general approval of the people. It was demonstrated that the civil military bureaucracy would not lead politicians or religious ideologies lead the country to anarchy. This laid down the foundation of supremacy of the military and orchestrated the initial rehearsal for the securing imposition of martial law in the country and its acceptance by the people. Lack of education has remained an important impediment to the democratization of countries. This is not just a problem for Pakistan, but of the whole third world. Lasky, a famous political thinker, said that education is the backbone of democracy. Democracy is a system of governance in which the people choose their representative through elections. This strengthens ties in the ballot box. If people are not vigilant and educated enough to make a better choice, democracy will not flourish in their country. This is the main reason that even in the countries apparently practice democracy, but the majority of uneducated people are among the underdeveloped nation. Masses in Pakistan have not found way of compelling their rulers to be mindful to their duty. Their failure in this regard results from inefficient of experience and training in operating modern democratic politics. Democracy put the highest premium on the constitutionalism, which is possible only with the predominant majority of people. Pakistan's democracy can neither improve nor become viable as long as the majority of the population remain uneducated. Judiciary is one of the most important pillars of a state, and in a country where judiciary is not imparting justice, democracy cannot develop. During the Second World War, someone asked British Prime Minister Winston Churchill whether the British would win the war. The Prime Minister laughed and replied that if the British court were dispensing justice, no one could trounce the United Kingdom. In Pakistan since 1954, judiciary has remained docile to the wishes of executive. As Shelley says, if the winter comes, can spring be far behind? In fact, since its birth, Pakistan has been governed by bureaucratic, military and a political elite. The bureaucratic elite generally become more assertive, steadily increasing their power at the expense of the political elite. Ayub's term of official, 1958 to 69, was the golden era for the bureaucracy, which exercised its power unbridled by any political interference. The weakness of political elites can be demonstrated by the fact that during 7 years from 1951 to 1958, as many as 7 prime ministers had been changed. From 1988 to 1999, 4 democratically elected governments were replaced on charge of corruption, inefficiency, security risk, etc. The civil military bureaucracy has dominated governance owing to the inherent weakness of the political parties and their incompetent leadership, resulting in the derailment of democracy thrice in the history of Pakistan, i.e. in 1958, 1977 and 1999. Pakistan was not created as a theocracy, but as a place where an economically marginalized minority could operate a democracy independently. It was to save the people from religious discrimination and domination by an overwhelming religious majority. Moreover, it emerged as a territorial state in the Muslim majority areas of the subcontinent. But the religious and the secular groups soon started making conflicting demands while formulating the Constitution of Pakistan. The speech of Mr. Jinnah on August 11, 1947, addressed to the first legislative and constituent assembly of Pakistan, had educated political pluralism and declared that religion or caste or creed has nothing to do with the business of state. This was not adhered to. The objectives resolution passed by the Constitution Assembly in 1949 specified the demand of Muslim religious parties and elements, but was not supported by religious minorities. The compromise solution attempted to balance the value and the spirit of Islam with the requirements of secularism due to a lack of competent and visionary political leadership and the fact that Muslims constituted 98% of the population, the conservative religious leader, party due to their conviction and the party owing to their parochial interest, educated and preached the establishment of a religio-political system based on Al-Quran and Sunnah. They were skeptical of the political social development of modern times and Western political institutions and forms of government. Their dogmatic theology clashed with the democratic culture envisioned by the founding fathers. Another adverse impact of the adoption of religion as a guiding principle in the Constitution was the promotion of religious secularism, especially between the two major sects inhabiting Pakistan, i.e. Sunni and Shias. Some section of this sect, instead of peaceful negotiations to overcome their differences, often resort to violence, which is against the spirit of both Islam and democracy. These rivalries fostered reliance on the security forces for the maintenance of law and order, which eroded the hold of democratic institutions in governance. For any healthy constitutional and political system to function smoothly, strong and well-entrenched political parties are essential. Unfortunately, political parties in Pakistan have failed to develop into strong vehicles of national political will. The main responsibility for safeguarding democracy in a country falls on political parties. Pakistan, since its inception, was lacking well-organized and well-established political parties that could carry the representative system of governance forward. The All India Muslim League, which had piloted the movement of Pakistan from 1940 to 1947, was not a well-organized political party, but it was primarily a movement. Leading a movement and organized a political party are two different things. Most of its leaders belong to areas that become part of Indian Union, and their majority did not come to Pakistan. Those who were in Pakistan, barring a few exceptions, belonged to feudal and land-owning classes that in their nature were in conflict with the democratic dispensations. In fact, the leadership of the Pakistan movement had few roots in the land that became Pakistan. Their incompetence and constant wrangling for power in their initial 9-year, 1947 to 1956, were also responsible for the delay in constitution making. Instead of cooperation and mutual accommodation, there was ceaseless infighting. For instance, as early as 1953, a clash between the leadership of Punjab and the central government led to intense communal revolts and the imposition of martial law in Lahore, the provincial capital, even as late as the decade 1988 to 1999 of a civil supremacy. The fight between the PML and the people led to the repeated dissolution of national and provincial assemblies and the dismissal of prime minister and their cabinets. Finally, it ended with the military takeover in 1999. The representative character of the civil military government during the first decade of Pakistan's existence was eroded because the country was governed under the Government of India Act of 1935. The purpose of the act was to make the appointment Governor General exert dominance over the Prime Minister. The act had introduced a representative and decentralized system of bureaucratic governance, which was an imperative requirement of the colonial government, but not of democratic governance. The first general election in the country would have been held in 1951, i.e. 5 years after the previous election in 1946, but this could not happen till 1970. The reason for the delay was that the ruling elite, i.e. several bureaucrats, migrant political leadership, and the weak political parties had few roots in the masses. As a consequence, general election could not be held for 23 years from 1947 to 1970 of the country's initial history. On the expiry of the 5-year term of Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the second general election on the basis of the adult franchise were held on March 7, 1977, which the Pakistan People Party won with a vast majority. The opposition parties alleged that the election had been rigged on a massive scale. It has been commented, elections in Pakistan have been rigged before, notably the presidential election in 1965 and the provincial assemblies election in the early 1950s, but rigged in this instance does not arouse the mass uprising as it did in 1977. The people of Pakistan were evidently not of the same mind nor as they were those earlier periods. Corruption in bureaucracy and among political leaders poses a grave threat to good democratic governance. Quaid-e-Azam had termed corruption as a poison and asked to put that down with an iron hand. Note that the International Reconciliation Ordinance, which had withdrawn from prosecution of any person falsely involved for political reason or through political victimization between 1986 to 1999, was lapsed on November 28, 2009. The concerned individuals should get themselves clear in a court of law in a transparent manner. The tribal nature of society in Pakistan is susceptible to nepotism. As an antidote, accountability and transparency are necessary. It is a challenge to the people to reject those leaders and the political parties which indulge in corruption and nepotism. One of the main bottlenecks in the constitutional development in Pakistan was that its two wings were separated by about 1,000 miles of hostile territory. The eastern wing considered of one province but is more populous than the western wings, which is much larger in the area and as many as 4 provinces. The western wing was not prepared to concede majority representation on the eastern wing in the parliament. After a confrontation 9 years between the two wings, the solution was evolved in the 1956 Constitution in the shape of parity of representation in a quasi-federal structure, neutralizing the majority of eastern wing and paving the way for the domination of the western wing. The domination of the western wing in province led to insurgents in the eastern wing, which culminated in the separation and independence of Bangladesh in 1971. In post-1971 Pakistan, it came to be realized that ideological moorings alone could not easily overcome ethnic and economic differences. Yet the anti-ethnic attitude and anti-modern thinking prevalent in certain segments of society lead toward a unitary and a quasi-federal state as against a true federation. The latest threat in emanating from extremism and terrorism, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, KPK, and the administrated tribal areas further. This is the spillover effect of the conflict in Afghanistan and is spreading in Pakistan. It is likely to continue as long as there is no peace and stability in that country. However, the military enjoyed the support of the nation in successfully combating the extremists and the terrorists under the supremacy of the civil democratic government. It is hoped that the process would continue to its logical conclusion. Due to the migration of literate Hindu and Sikhs to India, the literacy rate in Pakistan sharply declined. There was about 95% illiteracy in Pakistan in 1947, which acted as a hindrance to the growth of civil and democratic society. Feudalism and economic constraints did not permit any Pakistani government to launch a crash course to expand literacy and growth higher standard. The national economy has gone bankrupt and the national budget has become all foreign aid dependent. Islam was the ideology that gave life to the Pakistan movement and the later Pakistan itself, but is now infested with the sectarianism. Military policies gifted the country with cross-border terrorism and 3 million internally displaced people. Despite having the largest chunk of the national budget and being the 7th largest army in the country, the Pakistani army is now in a mess of its own creation, with the little of its hard-earned prestige left to its credit. The distorted face of the national system as a whole and the failure of judiciary to guard the constitution of Pakistan are the major factor contributing to the changes in national mindset. The events of the last 2 years have clearly shown the preference of the people of Pakistan. The masses want democracy as a political and governing system for the country, and a judiciary that guards the right of the people. The military would be suspected more if it stay in the barracks or guard the national border. The murder of Benazir Bhutto was that new lesson. If one compares Pakistan democracy with Western democracy, it is said that for our 50-year Pakistan remains occupied by 3 major interest groups sharing the tribe opportunity and the resources of the besieged nation: the Army's civil service and the neo-colonial appointed landlord. If there was any rational tolerance scale, the Pakistani nation would certainly score high mark on its standard of tolerance and survival under most unfavorable circumstances. One of the pivotal factors supporting the nation of the Western liberal democracy is that it provides opportunity for participation to ordinary citizens, right or wrong, to culminate a sense of legitimacy for the election exercise and choose people of their interests to manage public affairs for a specific term. But the principle and standards for evil and good vary between the West and the Islamic world. Strange as is, in Pakistan, those who come to occupy political offices never intend to quit the political power on their own except implication of military forces through a coup. Comparatively, on occasion Western democracies to encourage educated and competent citizens to strive for their high ideas and ideals and come to the front stage and demonstrate their intentions and willpower to seek the goal of ideal public service agendas. Each card defines the teaching-learned role of history, and its values must not be ignored but preserved. Recall the Pakistani military dictator for the last 40 plus years. They each consumed a decade or more to relinquish power. that was not there in any systematic and logical context. Ayub Khan was ousted by Yahya Khan. General Yahya, with the complacency of Zia-ul Haq, Bhutto surrendered the East Pakistan to India, now Bangladesh, to share power with Bhutto, but was put under house arrest as Bhutto assumed the power that did not belong to him based on verdict of the people. Rightfully, it was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, leader of the East Pakistan Awami League, who should have been sworn in as the new leader of the United Pakistan, but it was treacherously undone by Yahya and Bhutto. Both should have been tried as a traitor in a court of law and punished. Not so, they were rewarded, and Bhutto became the first civilian martial law administrator and the self-made president of defeated Pakistan in December 1977. Dr. Ishtiyaq Qureshi, editor of Urdu Digest, recorded it in the history, Sukut Dhaka se parda utha hai. Facts are revealed after the Dhaka surrender that, in the quest for its survival, Pakistan lost its destiny. Yahya and Mujib stabbed the body of Pakistan with one dagger, and Bhutto will stab Pakistan with another dagger. अच्छा, अब हम डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं सजेशंस. तो लेट्स स्टार्ट. Following are the suggestions for improving democracy in Pakistan. An initial system of accountability enhances public trust in the political system. It provides innermost strength to the democratic process. Moreover, it compels those who are charged with the governance to transparently discharge their official responsibility. It ensures good governance and strengthens the political setup. In spite of facing innumerable challenges and showing unsatisfactory performance, Pakistan has the capability to emerge as a democratic and a progressive nation. Pakistan can road to democracy with the dedication, determination, commitment, courage, and patriotism to its political leaders. Performing the judiciary and incorporating the Islamic law can also soothe the deprived and poor masses who have been manipulated by the extremists due to their sheer negligence of the elected governments and the ruling elite. This naturally causes bitterness toward the present form of political setup. Moving on, corruption and a selfish attitude are eating away at the institutional structure of our country, and such practices never allow democracy to flourish. There is also a need for mature political leadership, which can think about its own gain. All this can only emerge after the formation and implementation of strict accountability. On the contrary, weak public institutions can be made strong and productive if the power and authority seep down. The example of many European countries is in front of us, where institutions are powerful and not the politician. Democracy is actually can only be achieved through such measures. Our constitution has been a source of constant controversy. By the realization of Islamic law or the concentration of power in the head of state, the constitution has served as a tool for the legitimization of alien changes and policies. Keeping the constitution intact has been long overdue. No one's power should be allowed to change it for prolongation of rule or appeasing any particular section. The Pakistan movement envisages a democratic country with a federal structure. In all constitution of Pakistan, the objectives of governance, in the words of Dr. Ansel T. Embroye, Professor Emeritus of Columbia University. The democracy, the freedom, equality, tolerance, and the social justice as enunciated by Islam, giving Muslim freedom to live their lives in accordance with the teaching of Islam, but with the minorities having full freedom to profess their own religion. Islam lays emphasis on the concept of shura, i.e., consultation among people, which is the essence of democratic culture. Quaid-e-Azam, the founder of Pakistan, stated, "We learned democracy 13 years ago. Democracy is ill to our blood, it is ill our marrows. Daily centuries of adverse circumstances have made the circulation of that blood cold. It has got frozen and our arteries are not functioning. But thank God, the blood is circulating again. Thanks to the Muslim League effort, it will be a people government culture in the region of Pakistan. There is a concept of jargah or panchayat, i.e., the assembly of elders to settle issues and a dispute involving two or more two persons. This system has been prevalent for ages, much before the advent of Islam. Thus, both religion and age-old tradition educated the concept of consultation in decision-making through all assembly of people, which is the essence of democracy. During the period of British supremacy in the subcontinent, the practice of election to assemblies, local, provincial, or central, was introduced through various enactments. Finally, it was the Government of India Act 1935, under which the Dominion of India and Pakistan functioned after independence till they framed their own constitution. These enactments provide the groundwork for democratic governance. It may of interest to note that even when the democratic rule was suspended by the armed forces, the military rulers always come with the promise to restore democratic governance. For instance, in 1970, General Yahya is credited with organizing the first ever general election in the country, which led to establishment of democratic government both in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Besides holding general election in 2002 and 2007, General Pervez Musharraf's introduction of the local government system introduced in 2001 is considered as a laudable modern model of governance because of its principle that whatever can be done at local level should not be done at higher tier of governance. The country is on the path of achieving full literacy and a progress towards a higher standard of education in important disciplines. This is strengthening the civil society in ensuring the prevalence of democratic culture at the lower and higher level of governance. Secondly, the print and electronic media in Pakistan are vibrant and independent. A responsible media educates the mass, raises political consciousness, and thus promotes democratic values, norms, and culture. In addition, a number of non-government organizations, NGOs, are playing an active role in the field of education and contributing to the growth of vibrant civil society and good governance. The essential step seems to stop corruption in the democratic process so that we may see more than promos. To judge, sometimes it has to be allowed to change to survive and act. The elected government must be allowed to complete its tenure in any case. The military has to play a positive role here and not interfere in the smooth democratic process. As mentioned before, a part of the population wants greater Islamic character in the government and the laws. If we analyze this demand, it will be apparent that the enforcement of Sharia is more related to lawmaking. Therefore, that is immediately required is a change in the judicial setup, which has been unable to gain the trust of people until recently. Encouraging steps have already started in this case, but much more needs to be done. Sadly, the same corrupted pool of thought keep appearing with a new faces, and the received masses blindly follow them. This is due to the absence of any kind of accountability. Political compromises enhance this trend. Such practices are against the moral, democratic, as well as Islamic principle and should end immediately. Next, the all-powerful bureaucracy and feudal politician should be stripped of their unwarranted authority. It has been a slow evil that has weakened the country like nothing else. They are elected for serving people, not to control them. The criteria of merit, the right to freedom and equal progress for common people have become a joke due to such a autocratic setup. The people of Pakistan in general lack political psyche and consciousness. This is largely due to the poor literacy and a never-ending feudalistic rule over 60% of the country. Therefore, it is necessary to educate the masses and make them aware of their political right. This can begin with greater political socialization by political parties and the media. In a democratic state, media has rightly been called the fourth pillar of the state. It can play a most important role in the present age for creating awareness. Our media has risen for the ashes like a phoenix. It, however, needs to play a positive constructive role and not become another compromised institution as well. Finally, the strategic position and now the war against terror call for the unwanted attention from the international community sometimes. In the past, military rule has been coldly or openly supported by many countries to gain their own benefits in this region. The international power must stop interfering in the democratic process, and for that to happen, our own government, people, and the media need to be equally strong. The politician may have learned lessons from their past mistakes and are more mature politically. Consensus policies need to be emerged in the country. In the past, the constant infighting among politician parties had often led to the interference and takeover by the armed forces. Now a culture of reconciliation, accommodation, and dialogue is emerging. The ideological polarization is diminishing. After the general election of February 2008, four major political parties, i.e. Pakistan People Party, PMLN, Nawaz, Awami National Party, ANP, Jamiat Ulama Islam, Fazlur Rahman, and the Muttahida Qawmi movement has joined hands to govern the country and re-establish the supremacy of parliament in accordance with the Constitution of 1973. Our youth consists of 30% of the society. They are representative of a new generation. Their participation may ensure structural improvement in the national paradigm. It has been witnessed that during the Pakistan movement, youth played a vital role in opinion formation and mass awareness, and so is the time now. There is a need to guide our youth to take responsibility for our tomorrow. To sum up, it is political leadership that can ensure the permanence of democratic governance. The prospects are, however, not as dismal as sometimes portrayed. Already, the literacy rate in Pakistan has increased to more than 55%. Efforts are afoot to improve the standard of higher education. The economic growth and industrialization have given birth to a vocal urban society and a middle class, which is growing and gradually lessening the influence of the feudal class. The vibrant electronic and print media is playing an effective role in constructive criticism of the government and in educating the mass. Elections are being held regularly. Representative political leadership and the political parties are getting stranger, and the peace mode of transfer of power is becoming the norm. The bureaucracy, both civil and military, though still powerful, may retreat gradually and submit to the people power and will and concede to democratic governance. The democratic process is progressing and hopefully will be obstructed and derailed as in the past.